Thank you so much, ETV, for your invitation. Okay, thank you. As you know, Ethiopia is one of the greatest allies for the United States of America, and the relation between the two countries has passed many decades actually, because in turning, that's the beginning of 20th century. Starting from that, we have great ties with the United States of America. US is also one of the most influential development partners for Ethiopia. But for the last 3 years, actually, the relation between the two countries were characterized by up and downs, a diplomatic rift. That is starts actually following the war in the northern Ethiopia conflict. So United States of America actually had, even though the previous administration, especially during the time of Trump, the Foreign Minister, State Department now actually the incident. The cause of the incident is TPLF. But suddenly everything is changed. By the way, diplomatic rift is starting took place. In various occasions, the Department of State has released a statement which only supports the TPLF. So that is the beginning of diplomatic rift. At the same time, is even the second round when TPLF invaded various parts of Afar in the Amhara region, destabilizing the population. At the same time, it caused many incidents, especially the attack village and just massacre and different things. But instead of just blaming the TPLF, at the same time, the United States of America had unilateral position, especially which is disproportionate regarding the cause of the war. At the same time, the TPLF attacks on civilians, casualties. So that is how TPLF. I mean, how United States of America really support TPLF. This shows especially their sympathy, So that is how the diplomatic rift of the two countries is, just start to fracture. So when it comes to actually the following series of development actually is it's not based on mutual concern. As you know, Ethiopia is one of the oldest, greatest allies for the United States of America, especially in diplomacy and other things. At the same time, Ethiopia also one of the most important ally in terms of just supporting United States of America war on terror starting from 9/11. At the same time, we are located in since Ethiopia is located in strategic region, the Red Sea and Horn of Africa. The United States of America see Ethiopia as a development partner. At the same time, the United States of America also providing support, security, economic, and other support. But for the last 3 years, the support, even though the United States of America is still providing assistance, but still they are meddling in Ethiopian domestic affairs. So instead of just simply supporting the Ethiopian development assistance and other things, at the same time, the United States of America, even they also form a transitional government, which really affects the domestic, the internal sovereign interest of Ethiopia. So they are meddling in internal affairs at the same time, in different, in different means. They also issue statement regarding about the Ethiopia on domestic matters. At the same time, they also, just issue statement that seems like warning, warning. So what is the, just the whole thing is characterized by, just unilateral approach of USA foreign policy, which is based on carrot and the stick, instead of more flexible diplomatic approach that is benefit for both regime and both government. And instead of doing that, the United States of America only follow a policy approach which is based on carrot and the stick approach, twisting the hand of Ethiopia actually in the diplomatic approach. But Ethiopia has not surrendered that. Ethiopia always had committed for international law and principle. Ethiopia always, just issue statement regarding about the diplomatic rift between the United States of America and other international organizations, Western allies, because that's really against the Ethiopians' sovereignty. Because if someone is interfering on domestic affairs, we are not accept that. This is what our Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed also stated in the parliamentary speech. During the parliament speech, he stressed why the Western governments are really supporting TPLF at the same time. Okay, that's important development with regard to so-called regional diplomacy, actually. The Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed visit in Washington signals that is the beginning of moderate diplomatic approach. Instead of that is rift, actually the rift is took place, but the Prime Minister, the way the Prime Minister addressed Washington, at the same time the Prime Minister's visit in Washington signal that is the beginning of, just amicable relation, friendly relation. So, United States of America also changed the way the administration approach the current government. At the same time, Ethiopia also attend that conference, actually United States of Africa Summit, because Ethiopia is one of strong partner of United States of America. At the same time, Ethiopia hosts regional organization. At the same time, African Union, which is important for United States of America's interest. So the way we approach United States of America is that shows flexibility in terms of shaping our domestic and international priorities, in terms of keeping our national interests, by the way. The current approach development comes, that's on principle of win-win approach instead of simply twisting the hands of Ethiopia. The United States of America respect the sovereignty and the territorial in Ethiopia. As before, the United States of America will provide just one of development partners, at the same time they provide assistance to Ethiopia. If the United States of America stops the twisting approach in the respect the Ethiopian sovereignty, just we can change our diplomatic approach. That's based on win-win as before. So the current development, at the same time the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed visit is came from the recent development, particularly that take place in Ethiopia, at the same time internationally. Yeah, I believe that actually, because as you know, United States of America, one of strong development partners in Ethiopia, providing assistance which ranges almost, even this year, that's close to $800 million. That's not easy, by the way, providing assistance in other supporting institutions, democracy institutions, other entities. But when it came to actually with the contemporary rift, especially following the war that outbreak in northern Ethiopia, TPLF and the federal government, the way United approach is not really positive, because that is unilateral approach. At the same time, the statements regarding the northern ending the northern conflict, when the USA Department of State release, that is not based on fact in the ground. It is only just blamed the Ethiopian government instead of TPLF. That is based on just simply not mutual beneficial issue. At the same time, the way United States of America involved in Ethiopian politics is based on to keep their national interests, which is the approach they do is meddling in Ethiopian internal affairs and preserving their own interest and making TPLF to the center, which is really against democratic elected government, which is against the interest of Ethiopia, majority of Ethiopian peoples, because they don't support TPLF. But the way United States of America doing is not really respect the international law, which is the work is against international law. At the same time, United States of America also mobilized so-called the Western institutions, at the same time Western countries, the one in the name of so-called democracy, in the human rights, and the other issues. So everything the last 3 years, the Ethiopian diplomatic relation with the West is not good and not healthy, because, as you know, many times, especially almost 12 or 11 times, United Nations Security Council called meeting on Ethiopia, especially to pass resolution against so-called ending northern conflict and other issues. That shows how diplomatic relations took place following the incident, right? On the other hand, the realities on the ground is different. On the other hand, the issue that Americans approach the war is different. So that is only, following that, it affects domestic Ethiopian politics as well as internationally. Because, as you know, we are the leader of the world, especially. We are the one who founded the United Nations Organization in 1945. We are the founding fathers. We, at the same time, Ethiopia is influential in many regional in the global arena in terms of supporting world peace, and the one who provide United Nations peacekeeping mission in several African countries, the one who really just provide assistance to our neighbors. Same time, Ethiopia contribute a lot for the maintenance of international peace and order. But what the Americans doing recently is really against the interests of Ethiopia, which reflect only unilateral interest that is keeping the Americans in the Western interests. So-called, this group of countries are mobilized in the name of so-called human rights. But when TPLF is violent, when TPLF kill civilians, and when TPLF rape civilians, but this group of countries are silent, remain silent. This shows how these countries are mobilized to affect Ethiopia internally. At the same time, look, for instance, the Biden administration regarding the war, Ethiopia during the Clinton administration, as you know, Clinton administration passed resolution regarding to support African trade and to promote diplomacy in other things, especially the AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act. But the Biden administration withdrew Ethiopia from the AGOA. This is how it affects Ethiopian politics. I mean, economic as same domestically, because when Ethiopia withdraw from the AGOA, it affects Ethiopian textile industry domestically because AGOA provide tax duty-free importation, especially from Africa into American market. So we have like a row of investors, the one who depend American market, especially in terms of exporting their products, textile products. So this directly affects us because we are exporting almost close to $300 million. That's not easy for Ethiopian economy domestically. At the same time, internationally, international institutions, especially including IMF and the World Bank, withdrew their support because the World Bank financed a multi-billion-dollar project in Ethiopia following the Northern incident because World Bank is the replica of America, right? So the one who supported by American government at the same time, the majority of the monies came from the American people. So the World Bank withdrew support in the system loan, the one which is really important for us, especially for development of priorities in health, education, and other. Money all comes from World Bank. We can fund our budget at the same time. Also, we can finance those health, education, and other issues which are high value of infrastructure, which bring a lot of change on human life. On the other hand, IMF also, withdrew its support, especially in terms of $3 billion. Our leaders have promised to finance, especially following Ethiopian homegrown domestic economic reform. So IMF holding that money. That's huge. So they withdrew their promise, especially. That's affected domestically Ethiopian economy because that's large finance that is pumped into Ethiopian economy domestically. At the same time, it supports Ethiopian economy, especially its peasants, because American supports mainly the IMF and the World Bank, especially finance small holding peasants, farmers. So directly, indirectly, it affects the Ethiopian economy. The war internationally, domestically, domestic producers are affected. So-called the one who export to the American market, especially textile market, the one who benefit from the AGOA provincial investment. Provincial investment. So internally, the impact is not easy, as we know, because the war affects the domestic economy. That is true. Every country in the world. Okay. That actually the recent USA Africa Business Summit is almost took place after Obama administration. As you know, previously during the time of Clinton administration, the USA Africa relation is more focused on trade, especially that is the one benefiting African's economy domestically. But following that, since the coming leaders, especially focus on good governance instead of benefiting the Africans. So United States of America is ignored Africans matter, especially because so-called good governance became an agenda for American foreign policy in terms of addressing African Latin American issues. So they are not much benefiting like the previous administration. So the one who succeeded the Clinton administration is focused more on human rights, so-called democracy, and others. So the intention is simply so-called in the name of human rights, they interfere on Africans' internal matters. So these things affect especially the African-US relations, especially in the global agenda. which is common concept for both countries at the same time continents. But the recent summit it came from, as you know, most African leaders, countries, just changed their policy orientation toward the East. So they want to find a new alliance in the global stage, especially the one who protect at the same time the one who not meddling in internal affairs of African states, and the one not the Chinese, Indians. They are looking for Chinese, Russians for diplomatic relations, same time economic ties. Because as you know, the previous, especially following the Clinton administration, the sole priority of Americans are human rights. So they accuse African government, so in the name of human rights and other things. These are not welcome by the African leaders and a group of countries. The way American approach and policy influence in African countries. So African countries are looking for a new global initiative, global South. They want to establish diplomatic allies within so-called Chinese, which is emerging economy, and they're looking for alternatives for markets, same time in diplomatic ties. This affects especially Americans on the other hand. At the same time, Africans have like 30% of vote in United Nations. So this affects American interest because Africans have 30% block on United Nations means indirectly affect the American interest globally. So this and other things challenging, especially so-called the current United States American foreign policy decision makers. Africans have huge, right? 55 states almost. So the decision of these 55 states affect the global concern, which is dominated by the West. Sure. On the other hand, at the same time, African, instead of just working together with African leaders, like the Chinese and the emerging economy, the Americans put human rights as precondition to invest in African countries. This also affected American business sector, especially because they are not benefiting from lucrative markets in Africa. So they want to shift these two things, especially, and promote mutual economic benefit, the one which benefits both African states at the same time, United States of America. On the other hand, the significance of African geopolitics in global geopolitics is not easy, by the way. Currently, many African countries are looking for, looking for allies, especially in order to keep their national interest, at the same time to develop their economies domestically. So when these are, the role of African geopolitics increased not as before. Now Africa became prominent, especially in terms of providing alternative markets for Europeans and other Asian markets and Americans as well. In terms of geopolitical influence, currently Africans have high geopolitical influence, especially because since the current confrontation between East and the West is not healthy, as you know, most of them are diverting their diplomatic approach to the East for Chinese, Indians, and at the same time Russia. So these things really indirectly affect the United States of America. That's why Americans revamp the way she approach to Africa, her foreign policy priorities. So the summit not been actually sake of African interest. The summit is mainly driven by American foreign policy priority in terms of just diverting the African heads of government, the one who really forget the Americans and divert to the East. That is a priority, by the way. On the other hand, still just even the Biden administration not issued a statement regarding how Africa benefits from so-called the current summit. It's not clear for me because I see the influence of the East is not easy for Americans, competitors especially. So the East emerging markets like the Chinese, Indians, and other, including Russia, just are not interfering in African domestic matters. Turkey also one of the strong economy, by the way, in Europe. So these countries are really affect the Americans' interest in Africa. That's why Americans shift their political orientation toward Africans. And I think following this summit, everything will be not as before because it will be changed because at least Americans not interfere on matters on African affairs.